Yeah, stopped here. Uh, how many of you made the actual measurements? Try one that one. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, sir. Okay. I see some numbers here. Inside the room, outside the room. And inside, someone measured temperature of 25 degrees. Another measurement is 28.5. 3 degrees difference. Quite a large one, right? And the RH difference is, in one case is 62%, in other case is 48%. Okay. Let me look at. So, other side, in one case, RH is 44%, others are 54, 54, one case is 39. But of course, it depends on where you are. But within the room, I don't expect 3 degrees difference, unless. Inside the room, another measurement says 61%, another says 41%. It looks okay. Inside means in this room, right? Around 60%. And okay, actually, sorry. So first one was inside the room is 25, rooftop is 28.5. Okay. Right. So there is 3.5 degrees difference. So when I want to report the temperature as zero, what should I report? 28.5 or 25? It should be outside. Expect cooler inside or outside? Inside. Okay, and 48 and 62 is okay. But has anyone got down to the base and taken measurements?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the value there? At the ground floor. Okay. So there's an outside room, inside room is there. Someone said inside the room at 80%. I will see about 80%. And outside the room is 48%. Okay. Outside, another, this one is 62%. No.
Outside is garden.
Garden. Okay. Garden, that is 62%. 48%. One is rooftop, other is garden. So, I don't take what. Okay. Okay, that means you have to be more specific. Where it is taken, at what time, how it is taken, all this thing. So whenever you make these measurements, the way in which the data collected. So the data on data itself, or the information on data is also extremely important. This is what we call metadata. So when you say metadata, it means it gives you the details of the instrument, where it is collected, first floor, ground floor, inside the room, outside the room, all those details are there. So that when you want to interpret it, it becomes simple, there is no conflict. On the other hand, if I report these values as COS temperatures, it will be very confusing. Okay? And on the other hand, if you say inside the room is much, this is the condition under which it was collected, and there is that, no conflict at all. So therefore, whenever you make observations or reports, keep a full log of how it is collected, where it is collected. So if any question is asked later, you are sure that okay, this is the way it is collected under these conditions. Otherwise, in a small place, if you say that the difference of 14% in RH, okay, then it is not good. On the other hand side, if you say that okay, inside the room, so many people sitting, RH goes up. Because each of us is source of H2O. Okay. So it's good that they are in the right range and consistent. All right. Let's go ahead. Just to give you a flavor of how things change. What is shown here is the month of January, the variation of temperature, January, February, and March. Okay. This is one diurnal cycle. High around afternoon time, occurs around 2 o'clock. Maximum radiation is around 12 o'clock, but maximum temperature is reached around 2. The minimum is reached 12. When do you expect the minimum temperature to occur? Pardon me?
Early also.
Early?
Early also. Before sunrise.
Night 12 o'clock, before sunset, after sunset. Okay, just before sunrise, normally it occurs. In locations like Bangalore, place where you have sea breeze or some other effect, it could be different because it depends on the air which is coming in. Okay, but in Bangalore, the minimum temperature is early in the morning, before sunrise. Similarly, when temperature is maximum, RH is minimum. See, like this in January, it could be as low as 20% on some days it is 40%, some days early morning it goes up to almost close to 100%. If it exceeds 100%, you start getting dew. Okay. Bangalore, that is not that frequent, but you do get that. So, RH, because it is relative humidity, actual amount of water vapor may not change. That E value is there. This one may not change. What changes is ES, because it's a function of temperature. Because of this variation, when you report this RH, is always a strong variation, depending on when you report it. So many times when you see in newspapers, RH is 50%. Unless they say at what time, it makes no sense. Okay. So this one, you can see the slow seasonal warming here. Okay, start building up from January and onwards. The temperature starts rising because summer slowly going into the spring. On the other hand, keeps cooling around mid-January, you are already in the slightly warming phase. And also you see there are occasions when it dips, and again it increases, dips like this. So this occurs whenever the clouds are there. When clouds are there, the cooling rate increases, a lot more water vapor in the air. Okay. On the other hand, when you have very clear sky conditions, cooling is maximum. So this is what we call as intra-seasonal oscillation. On a time scale of about 15 days or so, some days you get very cold weather, after that some clouds come, slightly warms, again the clouds clear away, again cools. So that is what we see here. Right? So this is like expanding the time scale. See, on some days when there is cloudy, the diurnal change is very small, about 20 to 24 or 25. On the other hand, on a clear sky day like this, maximum will be 30 and the minimum is about 18 or 16, depending on the day, direct range. Okay. Corresponding RH is shown here. They are in opposite phase. When the RH is high, temperature is low, and vice versa. Okay. How do we measure rainfall? That is another critical parameter. And now the way the rainfall is measured is, the definition is that if rain falls on a flat surface with no loss at all, no evaporation, no runoff, and also pouring into the ground. Okay. So when rain falls on a flat surface with no loss at all, the height of the water column subtract what it falls. That's what we call as the rainfall. So often we report rainfall in height units like millimeters or centimeters or inches. The reason is, assuming that the rain falls on a flat horizontal surface with no losses, that would be the depth of the water layer that formed because of the rain. And that's what is the rainfall. And whenever you see the rainfall reported, it is taken at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. Like for example, when IMD reports rainfall today, today's rainfall. Actually, the measurement is taken at 8:30 in the morning and reported as today's rainfall. But so it's the past 24 hours. Actual rain would have occurred yesterday. Okay, something, let's say rain occurred at 12 noon or 5 in the afternoon yesterday. That is reported as today's rainfall for today. So one has to be careful. It means what it means is in the past 24 hours this much rain has occurred. Okay. Although on January 21st you report say 2 centimeters, there may not have been any rain on 22nd January at all, or 21st January. It might have occurred on the 20th January. Okay, so that is the caution you have to take. So this is a typical rain case, but I have brought it so that you get easy for you to imagine. There is a very well defined collector area, very sharp edges, so that this area is well defined. You know what the area is. Normally this diameter, there is no standard as such. Different agencies they take different values. Like for example, IMD takes this as 8 inches. Okay. In US Weather Survey Society they take 10 inches. Here it is 20 centimeters. There are also areas with 10 centimeters. So all this, but as long as this area is well defined, no problem. Then there is a vertical section. So rain falls inside. It should not splash out. That is the purpose of having this vertical section. The sharp edge is also same. Because if a drop falls in between, part of the thing which falls within the area should go in, the remaining should go out. So edge of this is like a knife edge. Okay. That raindrop cuts. And only the one which is inside should go in, outside should not enter. Otherwise your area is not well defined. Okay. So therefore you have to ensure that the rim of your rain gauge is perfectly sharp. Okay. Many times I find that they are given the rounded shape. Then that's not a good rain gauge design, because part of the water which has fallen outside splashes. Things which have fallen against splashes and goes out. So that should not happen. Then there is a small opening at the center. Okay. And then it goes inside. What is done is that inside you keep a small vessel. It could be a beaker, something like that, matter what it is. Okay. If rainfall is not too much, next day you pour out that water and measure the volume. Say, volume is 100 ml. Alright, you know the area. Area and height is volume. So from there you can make out what the rainfall is. Okay. The reason why this opening is very small is that you don't want the water to evaporate back. Okay, so therefore this opening is kept very small, so that there are no evaporate losses are there, but it's minimized. You can't avoid it completely 100%, but you try to minimize it. So this is a very simple rain gauge design. But the only question is how you measure that volume. The techniques differ. Like for example, if you are manually measuring it, all you have to do is keep a beaker below. Every day you empty it and find out what the volume is, and from there you calculate what the amount of rainfall is. That's manual. In automatic, what is done is that in this case, if you open this inside it, this is the way it looks like. This is what two small sounds cups are there. Okay. When rain goes and falls on one cup, it gets filled after point tips. The next one comes into position like that. Each tip is designed to measure a certain amount of rainfall. Like for example, in this case, every 0.1 mm of rainfall, if it falls, then it tips. Next tip is 0.1. So if you are able to count the number of tips, then you know the rainfall directly. Okay. So this is called tipping bucket. This cup what you have here is called bucket for some reason. So it's called a tipping bucket gauge. There are various electronically, you can also measure. You put a vessel here. When there is no rain, you measure the zero weight. When rain starts falling, if you keep measuring the weight of the change in the weight of the vessel, you also can track what the amount of rainfall is. So those are all different ways in which you can do. These are all automatic rain gauges. Automatically they record what the amount of rainfall is. The more recent ones. Okay. Then another device which measures rainfall now is called a distrometer. Okay. Here you measure the volume of the water collected. In distrometer, what you measure is how many droplets are falling per unit area. You measure the size, you measure the number in per second, for example. You know how many drops are falling in this. You integrate the volume, you get the rainfall rate. Okay, it is called the distrometer. So when you measure the volume, you don't know whether the rainfall came from big drops or small drops or what how many are there. All those information not there. Here, what you get is what kind of rain it is. Is one big drop gave all the rain, or there are n number of small drops which give the rain. Okay, so you know the characteristics of the falling rain, from which you can also make out what kind of clouds would have produced that, what kind of cloud processes could have. So this gives you a lot more information than this rain gauge. Okay, but there are uncertainties between this and this. If you try to compare this method with this method, okay, again there are some differences. Part of them arise because if one of the assumptions made here is that this rain drop doesn't block another rain drop along the path, because here there is a laser sheet generated, that light sheet passes through it, and the shadow which is generated is detected, and that is related to size of the raindrop. Okay. Now, if there are two drops along the same line, you are measuring only one. Okay. Similarly, if there are two which are next to each other, overlapping, you measure it as bigger. Okay. And here, if something falls at the edge, you measure it as a small size, but actually it is a bigger size. So all those are the uncertain. Therefore, this gives you a better idea of the type of the rain, its characteristics, like what kind of drops were there. So you can use it for characterizing the rain. Okay. On the other hand, not so good for telling the total volume of the rainfall. There is about 20% difference between the volume you calculate or rain amount you calculate from a distrometer like that and this one here. Okay, this collecting volume. That is a difference, but each one used for some different purposes. Okay, it's not the same. If you are interested in cloud physics, trying to understand how these processes are there, then use this. This one is also an optical distrometer, but it's called two-dimensional. Here there is only one. There you have two light sheets with two independent cameras, so that you can make out the actual falling, where it is falling. So that overlap issue is worked out. This is far more accurate than this one. Okay, but it is very expensive. This costs about 3 lakhs. This one is about 30 lakhs. You know, that's the price difference between them. Okay, in fact, on the rooftop, you will see this rain gauge. Okay, if you go, there is also another rain gauge. This is also there on the rooftop of COS. Next time when you go, please don't touch them. You see from a distance. Okay, they are. All right. Now about wind. See, why do you need to measure wind? Where it's important? Yes? Yes, that's right. He is working in aerosols and trace gases, so back trajectory, right? Right. Yes, what else? The question is, why do you have to measure wind speed and direction? Wind is a vector, okay? It has got speed, that's magnitude, and a direction.
It affects on the cooling, for example, spatially, it affects the wind velocity. It will decide how much cooling effectively takes or how much affects the going on.
Okay. So when you look at the applications, yes, transport models, like, see, for example, a very simple calculation. Okay. If you look outside, airspeed maybe let's say 3 meters per second. Okay, if it's coming from that end to this end, so 1 second before it was there, if it's 3 meters per second, 10 feet away. Okay, so 3 meters per second in 1 hour is into 3.6, about 10 kilometers. it comes. So therefore, if you have steady wind blowing towards you, the air which you are breathing now, it was 10 kilometers ahead, upstream, 1 hour before. So in one day, it was 240 kilometers. Okay. So in case you want to know what is it that I am breathing, you have to see who all added to the pollutants, what kind of these things were there, all the things which were there, you are breathing now here. Okay. In fact, it's quite a serious problem. There was a visit from Canada last year. You know, this the US used to have a large number of these chemical factories. And all the things they released there, it used to go to Canada and cause pollution there. It's not caused by them, it is imported from elsewhere. It is happening now also. This China is installing almost one thermal power station a week. You know, that is the rate at which their energy production is growing. And where does all that pollution go? It doesn't die over China, it gets spread around the globe, including part of it comes to our Bay of Bengal, India during winter season. All right. So therefore, one of the things is you want to know where it came and where it goes. And other one is when you want to calculate these energies, or you want to look at buildings, want to fly an aircraft, everywhere you need this information. Okay, it is one of the, it's also a very critical parameter. Numerical models, when you say, you start with that nonlinear equation du by dt, right? All those equations are. So whenever you call wind, we normally refer to horizontal wind component. The reason is the vertical component is invariably small. When average over 5 minutes or 10 minutes, vertical component becomes very small, only the horizontal one which is dominating. So you measure, whenever wind is reported, it is the horizontal component which is reported. And the devices which are used for wind speed are called anemometers. Okay. Anemometer is a device which measures wind. Thermometer, hygrometer. Okay. Here you have anemometers. Simplest one. This is what we call a cup anemometer. Okay. You see these cups, okay, with a conical shape, and you can have 2, 3 or 4, that is very common. If wind blows, it rotates. The rate at which it rotates depends on the wind speed. Okay. So therefore, if you are able to measure the rate of rotation of this cup, you are measuring wind speed. Okay. That is what this cup movement is. All right. Then you relate that rotation to the wind speed. So that is the calculation. And this is quite popular. This is okay for measuring the wind speed. Okay. It doesn't matter whether the wind comes from this direction or this direction. The rotation speed is same. Doesn't matter at all. Okay. It's the same. So it measures the magnitude of the wind and with the direction. Another type, propeller, cup you look at the shape. Alright, the form of a cup. Cup anemometer. You are holding it like this. You are measuring the component which is normal to the axis where you are holding. Okay. I am holding this vertical which measures the horizontal component, the normal. Propeller is very big. Let me see if I have that. You go up on the rooftop, you see that. Okay? That's something which is rotating and going all the time. It is nothing but a device which measures wind speed and also the direction. I'll tell you how to measure the direction. In this case, the rate of rotation of this propeller proportional to the wind speed parallel to the axis. There it is normal to the axis. Here it is parallel to the axis. So when you are chiller, you have done those small paper cups and trying to run like this works on very same principle. Only thing is the relation, the cup, this propeller shape is so adjusted that it gives a linear relationship between wind speed and the rate of rotation. There are various ways in which rotation can be used. Main thing is converting your wind speed into rotation. Then there is also not fixed, but it's rotating like this. Okay. The reason is that if you hold it like this, if the wind comes like this, you are not able to use that. So therefore, the fan there, it is aligning along the wind direction, mean wind, and then you are measuring. So all the time it's aligning itself along the mean wind direction. Okay. So it's measuring the mean wind component all the time. Only thing is it changes very rapidly this one to this one. As long as the slow components are there, we are able to. So there is also a small potentiometer inside this. Change in the potentiometer value. Basically, potentiometer nothing but resistance is a central. By measuring the change resistance, there you can measure in which direction it is oriented. So with this, you can measure both speed and direction. That one is the propeller. So both of them, in one case, the output from this is a sinusoidal wave. Okay, so basically a voltage. If you use a coil, for example, you know the same similar to the one you have this bicycle. If you have those headlights, you use a small dynamo, right? Same similar small dynamo can be inside this. Convert your rotation into a small electrical signal. Either it will be frequency or a sinusoid. But once the electrical output is there, you can always measure and find out the frequency. Finally, what you want to know is what is the frequency of rotation. Okay, relate that to that. As for the potentiometer is concerned, it's just measuring a resistance, change in resistance. That is very simple. Can be automated. Other one is called the sonic anemometer. Okay, in fact, let's also sonic anemometer here. This is also sonic. Okay. Here, each one of them, they have a pair of microphone and a sound producer. Transmitter receiver. This, both of them release a small pulse of sound simultaneously. And it travels from here to here, where the signal is received. Similarly, what are the sound which is transmitted from here, when the signal is received. Now, the ambient is quiet, no motion, then the transmission time is same almost. So you go from here to here from here. Alright? Then nothing but speed of sound, about 330 meters per second. You have to write down distance. If there is a mean width like this, then what happens is the one wave sound will travel from here to here will go faster. Okay. So it takes slightly lesser time here compared to the sound wave will travel from here to here because mean will be like this. But along this component, what matters? But along this, it gets slowed down. Okay. Time needed from here to here is slightly longer. Similarly, this glass. So by combining the information from this three set of transmitter receiver pairs, okay, you can find out the three dimensions of the wave. Now it is vector. Okay. Alright, all the 200 components and the vertical components, all of them you can find out. The advantage of this is that here you don't have to move any mass. In case of propeller, here you need some some minimum thing, it takes some time to come to equilibrium. So that's finite time inverted. So response time of this is about 20 seconds. Changes occur faster than 20 seconds, this will not respond. In these devices, you can go to 50 Hz, means the changes which are occurring 50th of a second can be measured accurately. Okay, that's quite high speed. So that is sonic computer. Same thing, when you look at average time data, that is proportional to that speed of sound, called the gamma marking, okay, which gives you information on temperature. Okay. From sonic anemometer, you can get both wind speed as well as temperature information. So it can measure the vector component of the wind very easily. These days, one of the problems with this kind of company that the bearing gets, if you expose it outside, after 6 months, 1 year, some dust or something enters. Likely there is some friction increases. Okay? Because once dust or particle or this small salt or something goes and deposit, friction increases, it slows down. You have to keep changing the bearing very often. On the other hand, the advantage of sonic is that there is no moving part. Alright, even if sometimes birds come and say, "Not this defect, not this spoiling," all those issues are not. So it becomes very popular. These days, even the routine automatic weather stations, these are all sonic anemometers, which are used in AWS installation. That is becoming very popular. So days of those, we started with cup anemometer, changed over to propeller because it is more reliable. Now the trend is to go towards sonic. But only thing is, sonic needs larger power supply. The demand on power is because you need to power to energize all those transmitter, receiver, and electronics, and all those things are there, and also more expensive. All right. So therefore, one has to balance between, if you have good power supply, funds are there, you want to minimize your effort, go for sonic. And wind direction. Just like I mentioned, because there is a difference in the way meteorological people define wind direction and what happened to point. This is the definition of how wind direction is measured. Suppose you have east and west, north and south, and then wind direction is the direction from which wind is blowing. For example, wind is blowing like this with respect to north. Then you measure from clockwise from north this angle. That is the wind direction. In this case, it is about 50 degrees or 60 degrees. Okay. But on the other hand, for oceanographers, the direction in which wind is blowing, for them it is this angle. Okay, there is a difference between meteorologist and oceanographer in the two cases. Then 180 degrees apart. So you have to know sometimes when you look at wind direction, is it the oceanographic report or a meteorological report. Depending on that, you have just the opposite. But this angle is. So therefore, if you have wind from the east, it is 90 degrees. If you have wind from south, it is 180. From north, it is 0. From west, it is 70. It's very easy, like wind direction. And like this is like the wind, what you see here. Okay, it's trying to align every time along the wind direction. So here, propeller and wave are combined in the same instrument. Sometimes you are using that type of instrument. You have a separate wave, and inside arrangement is very similar. What you have here. Then nothing but a simple potentiometer. You measure the resistance of that, and you get orientation very correct. very simple principle. On the other hand, if you have Fourier calorimeter, you are directly measuring U at two components, U at, okay. From that, calculate what from your vector algebra. All right. Next, we come to the radiation. In fact, the radiation itself, there are a variety of radiative terms. Global radiation, then directional radiation, diffuse radiation, then photosynthetically active radiation, PAR, higher radiation, UV radiation, UVA radiation, UVB radiation. So many terms are there. Okay. Now, all of that is related to the spectrum where you are measuring. Alright? If you are measuring in that UV radiation range, you call it UV radiation. Visible and all the entire solar spectrum included, you call it short wave radiation. If you are looking at only the one which is emitted by the earth in that range, that you call it as long wave radiation instrument. But that is the external description. But if you look at heart of all those instruments, it is very same. They don't differ at all. Okay. In fact, if you open up these instruments, what you find is at the center, there is a black surface. Okay. And below that, some body. And radiation falls on this. Is that emissivity close to 1. Very highly absorbed, extremely black. Okay. Black color. And when radiation falls on it, absorbs it. So its temperature changes compared to the surrounding. What is measured is temperature difference between this and the body outside. And if you have a thermocouple, which basically measures the temperature difference between two junctions, you convert this temperature delta T difference into a voltage. Delta means the voltage. Delta is the temperature because this is absorbing like a black body. We are surrounded by another body which is not absorbing. So therefore, this temperature difference is absorbing. So what is done is that you put a filter here, which allows the range of spectra you want to go. Okay. If you want to measure visible radiation, what you make this transparent to visible radiation. Okay. For example, if you use quartz, it transfers between 0.3 to 3 micrometer. Okay. You get short wave radiation instrument. Then what? So you can later come and see it here. Inside that, there's a small black surface, about half a centimeter, half an inch in diameter, a round one. Below that, there's a thermocouple junction. That it measures the temperature difference between that and here. That's what it is. And this is the cover, which is transparent to short wave radiation, solar radiation. So short wave. It measures short wave radiation. On the other hand, if you want to measure long wave radiation, inside structure is same, but change the cap. The cover with another filter which allows only the long wave radiation to pass. It becomes one wave radiation. Okay. But there is small difference between this side. In this instrument, whatever the cover you have grown allows solar radiation in the range of 3 to 0.3 microns, no problem. Whatever the radiation which is emitted, because remember, if you have a black body, it also emits. Right? Whatever the radiation it emits, it doesn't escape it. Because this material is not transparent to one way. Alright, so the radiation is emitted by the body inside, contained here only, doesn't escape. But on the other hand, you want the long-wave radiation to come in. So you make it transparent to radiation in the range 3 to either 50 or 100 microns. It depends on the instrument. Most of the time they go for 3 to 50 microns. Okay, then also the wavelength band emission, the radiation is emitted by this escape. That's the problem now. In that case, all the radiation is absorbed, there is no loss at all. It is contained inside. But here, something came in, part of plasma emitted back. So therefore, this is called an absolute instrument. Because all you need to measure is the voltage difference. Okay. On the other hand, when you want to measure long-wave radiation, you have to measure the voltage difference depending on the amount of radiation emitted and received. Also, you have to measure the temperature of the surface. Okay. So when it comes to short wave, so short wave you measure only delta V or voltage. Only one amount. But when it comes to long wave, you measure plus temperature of surface. That black surface you have to measure. Okay. So two measurements are involved. And if you know the temperature, you know that radiation emitted is nothing but sigma T to 4. True? Right? That's emitted radiation. That's what the loss is. You are measuring how much is that block what is emitting, and you are measuring the voltage difference. You see the temperature difference. And from there, you have to calculate the incoming radiation. How much is actually falling. So the calculation here is slightly more involved. It's not that straightforward. Okay? Just be aware that in case you want to measure long-wave radiation, then it's not sufficient to measure the voltage alone, but simultaneously you also have to measure temperature. If you don't do this, you will not get the radiation at all, the long-wave radiation. Many times what you find is, in most places you have the short-wave instrument. Very few places have long-wave instruments. Because the measurement involves little more complications than other things. So that is not done at all. Yes?
What about the directionality?
Directional?
Directionality. Directionality.
Directionality.
Yeah.
What is done is, it goes by your definition of radiation. Normally, whenever we say radiation measurement, we refer to what is global. When you say global radiation or hemisphere, all the radiation travels from this angle all the way to this. Okay. To make sure that you align it horizontally. Okay. This sensor is flat. You align it horizontally so that there is no direction of the difference. Is it clear? There is also a clear question now. Okay. Wait, but so that is always all the radiation instruments. You find a small spirit level which helps you align. It is that. Okay, so there are different manufacturers of these instruments. Okay, so you have normally the instrument which is measured for radiation is called radiometer. Okay, within that, like 5 nanometer is a device used for measuring solar radiation. Okay, Piezometer is the one which measures this long wave. So this is a piezometer, this is a piezometer. Okay, long wave and short wave. Also, you can have an albedometer. Okay. Essentially, what is done here is there are same instruments up and down. Two short-wave instruments up and down. This measures the incoming component, the bottom one measures the outgoing component. You take the ratio of these two things to the albedo. Okay. That's what we call as the albedo. So basically, what you are measuring is two components of radiation. There are variety of long wave radiation. This is piezometer, shape is different. This shape it depends on the manufacturer. Okay, there are large number of varieties available. This just shows you a typical field installation. Okay, like for example, this is the short wave radiation. This is so if you make this one transparent to entire spectrum of 0.3 to 100 micron, it becomes total net radiation. All the radiation what you have, it becomes okay. That way, depending on what you use for the filter. And there's something called photosynthetically active radiation. What is done here is you put a filter which allows only that photosynthetically active radiation. So all these are different ways, but inside the structure is very similar. This is just to give you a feel for how these numbers look like. Okay. Month of June, here the radiation watts per meter square. This is a short wave radiation. As I told in the morning earlier today, short wave has very strong diagonal variation, and if there is a cloud, you do get a lot of this one. And the small little things is the one which is outgoing short wave out. Okay, this is very small. This is over ocean or water body you have measured. If you measure over land, it will be much larger, about 100 to 150 watts per meter square. And this line is the one which is emitted by the surface. You see, in over ocean, measured from a ship, hardly varies because sea surface temperature hardly varies because it has much larger time constant. Okay, the variation is very slow. Heat capacity is very large. You hardly see it. And the one below here is the variation in the radiation which is coming towards the Earth. Okay. Again, this is 300, 600, 450 is here. So if you see the value, it is around 400 to 450. And this variation they are coming partially from the cloud cover. Whenever you have cloud cover, you see here, there is hardly any short wave radiation on a very cloudy day, not even 150 watts per meter square. This is what happens when you have monsoon rainfall. Okay, and you see the short wave, long wave radiation incoming. It has increased. Outgoing has not changed, so the net long wave become almost zero, very small. Okay, this is one of the influence I told you about the cloud effect. Okay, it is fine. Just to in Bangalore in December, a measurement. If you measure the long radiation going out, because our surface temperature goes from 20 to 30, 35, big diagonal cycle. Corresponding to that, outgoing flow will also increase drastically. Like for example, around afternoon time, it's 550 watts per meter square, quite large. Okay, incoming about 400 watts per meter square. So the net long wave here is about 150 watts per meter square. Over land, it's quite dry, hot surface. That long wave cooling is quite strong. Okay, and this is sunset time. Okay. All right. So your incoming radiation comes down, but the net long wave cooling won't stop there. It continues throughout the night. Okay, that's the reason why throughout the night the temperature keeps on falling. It is related to cooling by long wave radiation. During daytime it heats up, night time it is lost. Okay, average over a period of day, almost zero, let's say. Very small change is there. Okay, let me not, okay, these were some installations, fine, this is on the sheet, okay. Okay. Anyway, if you are interested in the details, you can get my, because these PowerPoint presentations will be handed over to you in the form of a CD or that USB. Okay, they are there. Any questions?
Sir, why we use only 3 cups on the cup?
See, we use either 3 or 4. Okay, and a large number of experiments have been carried out by varying the shape of the cup, the cup diameter, this is the arm length, shape of the cup and everything. So you put 4 people. Then what you do is the following. Suppose you are testing it, developing this instrument. Suppose you know what the alright, then the number of rotations per second. Ideally, what you want is a relation like this. But sometimes what happens is that you want to spot because of friction, then it goes like this. So, only useful range is this linear. Basically, you want to expand it to larger range. So, by experimenting with these different combinations of shape, size, arm length, number of cups, you arrive at the best combination is 3 with certain geometric variations, so that for a range of almost threshold about 1 meter per second to about 25 meters per second, okay, you have a linear relationship. After that, it deviates. Okay, that's a useful range. If you same thing repeat of propeller, the range is enhanced by up to about 30 meters per second. 25 and 30. Linear relationship with that. After that, again it will not valid. In the case of cyclones, you know what the wind speed is like? 50 meters, 60 meters per second. So, these propellers or components, they will break away, they won't be measured, not reliable. Sonic, it can go up to 60 meters per second, plus or minus. Okay, that is about 200 meters per second velocity. Okay. Sonic is one option, but beyond that is the estimation. Okay, whenever you report, you know the lowest pressure, based on that, you estimate that okay, wind speed must have been 70 meters per second. Okay, earlier days we had access only to this and this propeller type. Maximum is about 30, but beyond that is not reliable. Sonic kilometers go up to 60 meters per second, or 200 kilometers per hour, you can measure the reliability. But beyond that, like sometimes you know that what is the super cyclone we had in, I don't know, you might have been quite done that. Then the wind speed is estimated 250 kilometers per hour. Okay, more than 70 meters per second. None of these devices will be able to measure. Okay, it's only the estimation. You get the damages to tree and other things. Yes. Sure. Any other question? Yes.
So, for this temperature sensors height, if I'm installing it in a day where it's rocky and it might snow in the winter season, so what should be the height? Yeah, I mean, you told that we need to protect it from direct radiations, but what about the radiations from coming from the ground?
Yeah. Once you use the radiation shield, it protects from both, coming from below and okay. How many of you seen a radiation shield? Have any of you seen? One, two, okay, maybe I'll bring a radiation shield. Sridhar, Is the radiation sheet there? Yeah, can you please bring one? Okay, by the way, is Mr. Sridhar is GRF working with me. Okay, it protects both from coming from below as well as above from the sides. Use the radiation.
I was just asking about the optimum height we should install it without sensor.
Oh.
Height of this sensor.
No. See, if you are in Bangalore, the problem is simple. I am not talking about Siachen or your some snowing areas because that's or suppose you make a measurement. All right. Temperature along this axis, height is along this axis. You can have this is 0, this is 5 or 10 meters. Okay. 4, 3, 1. Now, if you make weather temperature here at this side, at this side, at this side, like this, and plot. How does that look like? Okay. If early in the morning, surface temperature, let's say 80 degrees centigrade. All right? But temperature above may be like this. There will be some inversion kind of a thing. On the other hand, if you are measuring at 2 o'clock, it could be 20 degrees centigrade. And drop drastically to 6 degrees. So in the lowest 1 meter, there's very sharp gradient in temperature. Okay. Normally, we avoid that. Very sensitive. Between 1 and 2, the difference may be about 0.1 or 0.2 degrees, not very large at all, within the accuracy of your temperature measurement. Gradient. And above that, it is like slowly will height. Okay. So if you go by Newton of standard, temperature is measured between 1.2 and 2 meters. 2 meters, that's it. You avoid, unless you are doing research, you would like to know how it actually varies. Otherwise, whenever I take, for example, reports, that temperature is with measured between is about 1.2 meters, 4 feet, 4 to 6 feet. That's the range in which. So essentially, my shoulder height is the height at which the temperature. So if you hold your thermometer like this and measure this height, all right. But if there is no height changes, okay, that's the problem. Not. See, in those cases, I think you mount the temperature sensor which is 4 meters or 10 meters, so that snow is not covered with snow, and try to relate that to the surface temperature.
So each sheet will be measured with different heights.
Yeah.
How we can compare that?
No, there are some articles in this grade is. So whenever you see ship reports, all of them are reported at temperatures. Okay. Just see, the ship article says surface is 30 degrees. There it is 28. So this gradient is quite small. It's not large. But over land, this is very large. It could be 5, 10, 15. Okay. If you are measuring over a bare soil with no vegetation, say in April, May or June when there is no rainfall, in Bangalore, 0 height, the skin temperature is 60 degrees plus. Air temperature at 2 meters height is the actual measurement. You put a thermometer at the soil, southwest layer, you measure 60 degrees. That's why during summer, if you try to walk barefoot, it starts burning. Okay, on the other hand, at this height, you don't feel that kind of hot at all. The reason is surface is almost like 60, 65 degrees, very hot. And many times you see the road, the tar is melting. That's the reason. The temperature is so hot. But at your height at which we breathe, it is no longer 60. But it is 35 in Bangalore. In Delhi or other places, it will be different. But there, it's very strong gradient in the first couple of meters. Okay.